Hello, parents. Welcome to our training on kids and motivation. How do we motivate our kids to get them to do what we ask without bribes, without having to punish, or without having to offer them rewards? So, a couple of parents have actually asked for this training and these resources because they either struggle getting their kids to help out around the home with chores, with responsibilities, without having to nag them. Another parent asked me, how do I get my child to, for example, do homework and do the basic things that they need to do without bribing them, without having to offer them rewards every time to get them to do it, right? So, if you have a school age kid, all the way up to when you start to teach them responsibility and they have to start, um, perhaps doing things around the house to help with the upkeep of the house, like chores or their own laundry or helping out mow the lawn or things like that. In that case, it would be probably tweens and teens who have more of those house responsibilities. I encourage you to watch this video to understand what is going on with them, how we can hack the brain science to get them to be more agreeable to do what they want without having to bribe them. So, first of all, let's talk about what the two kinds of motivation is. We have intrinsic motivation and extrinsic. Now, intrinsic means anything that's inside us, that's coming from inside, so self driven. Extrinsic is anything that is outside. It's not self based, it is anything in the world, anybody else who is doing things to motivate us, right? So we have some kids who naturally just seem to have more of an intrinsic type of motivation as part of their personality, right? And you'll notice these kids, they are very self-driven, self-motivated. They may be self-starters, right? You don't have to ask them 100 times to do something. You could ask them maybe once or even offer them a reminder, and they get started and they can carry a task through to the end without a whole bunch of reminders and nagging, right? And you'll notice these kids are typically they are interested in some kind of hobby, or maybe they have an interest that they want to learn themselves. So, for example, maybe your child is really interested in a kind of sports or getting into a sport. And so they will spend a lot of time either researching it or watching videos about it, or maybe want to download some kind of course online about how to get better at these things. Maybe it's something tech related and they're really, really interested in coding or STEM or something like that. And they will um, out of their own volition go out to try to find the information they need to get the information they need, right? We see kids who maybe they're younger, for example, they will spend a lot of time on a picture or a drawing or if they're a creative type, maybe they're painting or something. Maybe if you have a boy and they like building Lego, they will spend hours building a castle or some kind of design or robot. And they seem to have a lot of natural focus as well. They don't get distracted by everything. Or perhaps you have a girl who is in dance, or maybe she is in dance or movement or something like that, and maybe she'll spend a lot of time learning new dances from TikTok, or maybe she's really into makeup and beauty, and she'll watch a lot of tutorial videos on how to do these things herself, right? And you're not having to nag her like, hey, did you learn this new hairstyle? Did you watch it? Did you figure out how to do it? They'll just do it themselves. So you can see some of our kids have these naturally intrinsic motivation qualities, right? If you think of anything that if you have a child that really enjoys a hobby or they have some kind of specific interest and you don't have to nag them to do the thing. You may even have to nag them to just stop doing the thing, right? We have if you have a tween or a teen, perhaps they have a lot of intrinsic motivation for video games, right? They don't need any reminders to do that. They do that right away, right? So you can see every one of us humans has intrinsic motivation, but it's going to be about different things. Now, the downside to that is that most of us aren't naturally motivated to do things like cleaning or cooking, unless I personally enjoy cooking, so I have a lot of intrinsic motivation to learn new recipes. But for a lot of people, it's a bit of a chore. Nobody is motivated to do laundry or clean their house, really, right? And so it's very difficult to get our kids to do something, to have the passion to do something that even we as adults don't really enjoy doing, right? Cleaning, clean your room, do your laundry, do your homework, right? Nobody's really motivated to do those things. So, how can we get more of those intrinsic motivators and apply them to things that we may struggle to get our kids to do naturally, like, doing your homework, cleaning up your room, folding your laundry, making sure you wake up on time or go to bed on time, right? A good tip is to find out what interests them and use it to blend in with the chores or the tasks they find tedious to do. So, for example, an idea could be if your child is really into music and maybe um, listening to certain music or certain artists get them really excited to move their body and do things, then okay, perhaps picking up their room and putting all the things away and doing all those things is a chore and I have to nag them every time, but I know they're really into music. So, what about if I mix that thing that naturally motivates them? They love listening to this and dancing around the room. So, what about if I say, hey, for 10 minutes while you're picking up your room, while you're tidying things up, I'll let you play your music as loud as you want, maybe not too loud, but as pretty loud, louder than I normally would, just to give you that motivation so you can pick up your room or see if how many clothes you can pick up off the floor and put them in your laundry basket by the time this song ends, right? Start to add a little bit of play. And I talk about this later. How children naturally play is a big motivator for them. And I would say even up to 10 years old. If you make it, this is why gamification, making anything into a game, tends to motivate our children, right? You can take something that's quite boring and add an element of competition to it or give them a time limit, and all of a sudden it's a game, right? So tap into, if you have a very competitive child, they may enjoy that competitive nature. Okay, let's see who's going to be faster, mom or you, right? Let's see who's going to pick up more toys on the floor. Is dad going to pick up or are you going to pick up faster on the floor, right? By the end of maybe you have a counter or a timer and see how many toys you can pick up at the end of that time, right? Tap into your child's natural motivation. Find things that interest them, whether it's music, whether it's making things into a game. And this takes practice and skill, right? You can go online and figure out how can I make things more exciting for my children by adding an element of play to it or an element of competition to it, right? So we also want to tap into our child's natural leadership skills. Now, I truly believe that all children are born leaders, right? Now, some are naturally more extroverted, and we typically think of that as leadership, kind of a leadership personality. But there was a study I actually read yesterday. I came across something yesterday, and it was saying that when they did these tests on children under the age of 4, they found that the genius level, and when we're talking about genius level of thinking outside the box, being naturally passionate for doing something, the kids under 4, there was something like a 84 percentile of these kids had genius level abilities. Then they did the study with kids who were 7 and 8 year old. It went down significantly into like 40 or 50%. And by the time the kids were in high school, it was like 19%. And so, what does this mean? This means that unfortunately, school and the way things are set up at school and having to follow very, very strict boundaries, and you must think within these parameters, and there is yes and no questions. It doesn't really give you open-ended um, possibility or opportunity to really use your own genius and your own motivation, your own judgment. There is black and white answers, right? You either get this answer right or it's wrong, right? And that's not the way the world works. That's not how humans work. But school, unfortunately, that is the system that that most schools use. We have many schools nowadays who are starting to be a little bit more open with the way they teach kids and allowing kids to use their own passion, their own motivation to choose the subjects that they want to learn. Right, my 16-year-old son goes to a school like that, where actually the students themselves get to choose what kind of topics they would like as a 4-week intensive course or something like that. And I see my son, who was never particularly bookish before. He was just like, oh, school's boring, whatever. But yet when he gets to choose, he can't wait to get to school on time. He's up at 6 o'clock in the morning, leaves the house, skates himself to school, and is really, really excited about these topics because he has some say in learning what he wants and how they learn as well, right? They get to collaborate with other kids. And so kids want to be able to have some autonomy and choice in the things that they do, right? And when they go to school, they're just taught sit down, be quiet, do yes or no, black or white. They don't have a lot of opportunity for choice, right? And this is where they tend to really, really, because they have the need for choice, they tend to really go completely to the opposite extreme when it comes time to express, for example, the way they talk or the way they dress or the way they dance or the makeup they wear or whatever. Right? They're looking for an element of that in their everyday life. And unfortunately, at school, where they are for the majority of the day, they don't get that opportunity. And then when they come home and we say, oh, by the way, you have homework and you need to take out the trash and then you need to walk the dog and you do, that's just more of the same, right? It's like, when do I get the chance to just be me and do things the way that I want to, right? And so, of course, this doesn't mean, oh, we just let our kids do whatever they want. We're giving them freedom to do what they want. They still have responsibilities, but how can we mix responsibilities, what we know our kids need to learn and what they need to do, with giving them a say, giving them an option in how they do it, right? And so when we can marry the two and blend the two, you're going to see your child naturally become more motivated because they get a say in how they do things. So you can say, because we're setting boundaries, we talk about this in one of the later slides, setting boundaries. You need to have your room cleaned by the end of the week. However, I'm going to let you know, like, and so maybe helping them with tasks, right? Which, I think we break that down a little bit later. If I give you these tasks and we have 4 or 5 different tasks to do, but I'm going to let you which choose which one to do first, right? You have to pick up your laundry and do your laundry and fold it up and put it away. You need to vacuum your room. You need to take down all your dirty dishes, right? I'm talking about as, a teenager here. You take down your dirty dishes and you need to take out the trash, right? Now, I'm not going to nag you and tell you which one you need to do first. All I know is by the end of the week, by Saturday, this all needs to be done if you want to go out with your friends, right? So there is a little bit of extrinsic motivation there. They want to do those things. And we are giving them an element of choice in what they do, right? So you can choose, do you do laundry first? Do you do your trash? Do you do vacuuming? Right? They get to choose within that. For younger children, it could be something like tapping into their natural desire to help. Now, especially we're talking about preschool and kindergarten age children. They love showing their parents how much they can do, right? That's why we have little kids trying to, serve themselves a drink and spilling it all over the table, right? They love to show both themselves and others that I can do this by myself, right? And so this is where it takes guidance, but we also want to tap into hey, if they want to do it by themselves, we want to encourage that rather than, oh, you're going to take so long to do it, or you're not going to do it as well as I do, or you're going to make a mess while you do it. That is taking away that internal drive to do things themselves, right? And then we wonder, my parents have done all these things for me. They haven't let me do anything by myself or without help because I think I'm going to mess it up. And all of a sudden, we want them to be motivated to do everything by themselves when they're in their tweens, right? When we haven't really allowed them the space to make mistakes and to learn those skills themselves. So encouraging them to do things like, hey, can you help me set the table? Can you help me prep the salad? Give them a little knife and help me cut the cucumbers and tomatoes and put it into the salad. Help me rip the lettuce, right? As much as possible, getting our kids to demonstrate to us that they are capable, right? And when we let our kids do this, they will naturally feel more motivated to help because they're proving to themselves, I can do it. And they're also proving to us that I can do it. And so there's this element of pride that I can do it, right? We call this mastery. Um, Another point I like to bring out is how much do you involve your kids in decision making? This was actually a talk I just had last night with some parents. Involving kids in decision making is a crucial part of having them continue to be motivated. Nobody likes being told what to do, right? Nobody healthy anyway. Some people just maybe because they don't have to take responsibility and that way they can blame other people if everything goes wrong. But in general, nobody likes being told what to do. No one likes being ordered around. And yet, for the majority of our kids' lives, up until they're 18 and move out of the house, they are being told how to live their lives. They're being told, especially depending on what kind of parent you may be a helicopter parent who doesn't let your child do anything, right? You can't do it that way. No, you have to be careful. And we're just constantly butting in and giving our opinion on how things should be done. And also not allowing our kids to really make mistakes, to really learn from their experiences of, oh, I messed up there. Okay, I'm going to do something different next time, right? We just jump in and bulldoze either any challenges for them or we take over when we see they're struggling. So by involving our kids in decision making, we are helping them tap into this internal motivation, right? And in school, it could look like if you have a troublemaker. Now, I used to do this. I used to use this technique quite often in school. When I had a kid who was acting out, who wanted attention, who wanted validation, who was being noisy and disruptive with the other kids, I would make them a leader in my class. I would call them up to the front and say, I have all these papers and pencils I need to pass out to the other kids. So and so, Billy, can you come help me pass these papers out to the kids? And it gave them this sense of, wow, I'm important, first of all. It boosted their need for significance, right? That desire for I want other people to see me and see that I'm good at doing something and I'm important because teacher called on me. And also it tapped into this boy, for example, his leadership skills of, hey, I can go and hand out these papers. Nobody's telling me how to do it, who to go to first, how fast to do it, right? And so, if you have a child who is stubborn or who seems to get into a lot of power struggles with you, involve them in decision making, right? Because you have a kid with natural leadership abilities, and they often don't get the chance to do that in school to show that part. So, try to get them into more leadership roles at home, whether or not that's helping a younger sibling, whether or not they're saying, hey, I've got really heavy bags of shopping. Could you help me bring one bag in, right? Depending on how old they are, or help me bring two bags in. Tapping into that and giving them some validation there of, hey, I'm helping out. Everybody, especially kids, like to help. For example, when you're out in the community, right, helping them or also modeling this for them, holding doors open for other people, right? If you're at the supermarket and you see trolleys all around everywhere, hey, grab that trolley over there. We're going to take them back to the trolley area, right? Model for them what a good community and a good citizen looks like, and so you are doing, kind of two birds, one stone right there. You're modeling for them that I do this myself, and also you're giving them the chance to show their leadership abilities and skills and motivation to help by giving them an opportunity to do that, right? So, extrinsic motivation, unfortunately, is the way most of the world works. And we as a society are getting so addicted to extrinsic motivators, right? Social media, likes, followers. Our kids as young as 3, 4 years old are already starting to watch YouTube videos and they know that little button of how many likes, how many followers. They know what that means, which is crazy, right? Like when we were 3, 4 years old, did you even think we knew, oh, this person is really, really popular because they have a lot of people following them? We didn't know that. We might have started to learn that at school when that kid had more friends and I only have a couple, right? Then we start to understand what popularity was. But nowadays, because our kids have access to these things like YouTube and social media, they are seeing, wow, this person's really popular. They have 110 followers or 110,000 followers, whatever. They get a lot of reacts. They have a lot of likes. They have a lot of loves, right? They have a lot of influencers. Wow, they have a lot of people following them. Look at these YouTube guys who start promoting their drinks, and now all of the kids want to buy that drink, right? We see so much of this in pop culture nowadays. Another thing is that as parents, we allow our kids to use this extrinsic kind of motivation as a way of distracting from their own feelings inside, right? Using extrinsic motivators like TV, or even food to an extent, right? And we tend to almost this is what we're talking about, bribes and rewards, right? If you do this, I will give you this, right? When you finish this, then you can have dessert, right? You see how, rather than just making it about themselves and them feeling good about themselves, and it being basically it being enough that they've reached a certain goal, or they, for example, putting the trolley back, right? They don't need someone to go, oh, good job, you're such a good person. That's extrinsic motivation. They will feel that goodness in themselves just by putting the trolley back and being like, even if no one saw me, I know that was a good thing to do, right? I was helping my community. Even if no one sees me open the door for somebody else, well, except for that person, even if I don't get a whole bunch of praise and accolades for that, I know that that person saw that, and that's enough for me, right? Sometimes it doesn't take loads and loads of eyes or attention on us. It's sometimes enough to get one or two persons to acknowledge it, but to feel like, I know that was a good thing to do. I know I'm a good person. I know I got some kind of reward, internal reward for that, right? But because nowadays everything is, you need likes, you need eyes on you, you need followers, you need all of this. I can post something online, and if nobody within 5 minutes reacts to it or gives it a heart and a like, it must mean that I'm not very good. Rather than, I think that was a really good picture of myself, and I love that I looked good in that picture, and I'm going to post it just because of that. Right? But it's, I'm going to post the picture and check how many likes I get within 3-4 days. If I don't have, all my friends have already liked it and commented on it, it must mean it's not very good, and I'm going to take it down. And so you see how it's switched from just feeling good about ourselves based on our own values. It's based on, what do other people think? And even if I feel good about it, if other people don't think the same, then all of a sudden that makes it less valuable, and I don't value it as much, right? And I saw this question from a mom the other day, and she said how her teen daughter, I think she was 13, and her mom, she was super excited to set up the house with a whole bunch of balloons and decorations for her birthday party. And this was like a 13, 14-year-old girl. And she was super excited. We're going to have this fun party, and our house looks so nice. And her mom spent a long time um, decorating with her. And then one of the neighborhood boys came to the door and knocked on the door and asked her to come and, like, hang out with them. And the teen boy kind of poked his head in the door and saw all the decorations, and kind of, the mom didn't hear what he said, but he said something, and then the girl closed the door, and then she came over to her mom and said, I don't want any of these decorations. Like, let's take them down. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have this party with all these decorations. And that is so sad, right? That the joy of what she wanted to do was taken away because extrinsic motivation, outside opinions, meant more to her than what she thought. And this is why I tell parents, have your kids check in with themselves, listen to their own values, what feels good in their body. When something doesn't feel safe in their body, we don't want to override that, because they grow into teenagers who all of a sudden don't listen to what their body is telling them and what their gut is telling them, really, right? And they start to listen to what their friends say as more valuable, as smarter, as, oh, I need to fit in, so I can't be myself, I can't like what I like, right? So super important. Really focus on developing a child or a teenager. And it's difficult when they're teenagers because this has already been ingrained, and especially if they have social media, it's tough. But focusing on, how do you feel about that, right? Now, and this is super important because we have a lot of parents who jump in and use, oh, I can't believe, I'm so proud of you. And I'm proud of you is great, right? Because kids want to hear that. But at the same time, we want to offer, we want to say that we're proud of them. We don't want to focus so much on our own feelings and our own perception and opinions of what happened when our child has done something. We want to tap into, how do you feel about this? Okay, I'm proud of you. How do you feel about it? Right? And if they go, well, I think I could have done better, then you don't, then trying not to override. No, you did fine. Well, I think it was beautiful, right? Tapping into what they're feeling, have them listen to what they're feeling, and we need to listen to what they're feeling as well. Because when we override what they think, or even we have a younger child who comes to us and is so proud of the little drawing they did, and we jump in right away with, oh, well, that could have been a little bit rounder, or maybe that doesn't really look like a flower. That, maybe it could have been done like this. And they've been so proud to show it to us. And all of a sudden we criticize them and take away that internal joy from them. That also leads them to override, like, oh, what I feel doesn't really matter. It's only what mom feels or what dad feels or what my friends feel. That's more important than what I feel and think, right? Really focusing on, it doesn't really matter what other people think. What do you feel about it? What do you think about it? Right? So that is just the difference between the two, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about communication, because this is what I see happening so much in homes. Now, we weren't taught usually by our parents. If you're lucky and you had parents who communicated well, wow, you were like far ahead of anybody. But for the majority of us, we didn't grow up with parents who knew how to communicate in an effective and a clear way, right? And perhaps you may have been in the situation, or maybe you imitate this yourself, of you're upset about something and someone asks you what's wrong. Could be a spouse, it could be your child, right? You're stomping around the kitchen and slamming cabinets and slamming the fridge and huffing and puffing. And someone says, are you okay? And you go, I'm fine. Ooh, how many of us as moms are guilty of doing that, right? And so it's very common for parents to get frustrated with their kids and teens because they don't do what they're asked. And when I talk to parents about these kind of like crossed lines in communication, what I find out is that they are unaware there are these 4 levels of communication. So, number 1 is what I intend to say, right? I'm thinking about something, I know what I want. Whether or not I actually communicate that in a clear way is not always the case, right? We call this fragmented. Have you ever heard of somebody and they're kind of venting to you, and in their head it makes sense to them, but what it's coming out is like, what the hell are you talking about, right? Just like, okay, yeah, I can't see how that was connected, but I'm gonna try to listen and be here for you, and I'm not quite understanding you, right? So what people intend to say and what they actually say can be very different. And then we have going across to the other person. Then we have what they hear, right, based on their model of the world, their mood at the time, their attention level. And then number 4 is what they assume I mean. So do you see how it's kind of like, I tell the kids, but we teach this too, it's like Chinese whispers. It goes through all these levels, and by the end it's like the message is completely different to what it was originally intended, right? So, for example, I'm going to give this thing of come and eat dinner. Now, we're in the kitchen, we're cooking dinner, and dinner's ready, and the kids are there watching TV or playing a video game or whatever. And what we want to say is, like, okay, dinner's ready, the table needs to be set, the TV's on, younger siblings need to wash their hands. So, what I intend to say is, please turn the TV off, wash your hands, and help me set the table. What I actually say is, hey, dinner's ready, kids. What the kids hear is, Mom made dinner. Oh, good. What they assume I mean, right? By saying dinner's ready, I know it means come and eat. But for them, dinner's ready just means, oh, dinner's ready. We can go eat when we're hungry after we finish this cartoon episode. And so do you see, when we wanted them to turn the TV off and come wash their hands and sit down at the table, and they assumed dinner's ready, we can come eat whenever we want or after our episode is finished. And we're like, come on, I told you dinner's ready. Like, I know what I mean. I means do this and this and then this. But we never actually communicated that to our kids. And what they actually translated that is something totally different. Now, we also need to take into account that it's very difficult to stop what we're doing when we're enjoying ourselves, right? If you are there watching your Netflix show and your husband says, "Hey, honey, can you come and help me unload the groceries from the car?" Or "Can you help me, help me put up some decorations outside?" You're like, "Okay, just give me like 10 minutes until this episode's finished and then I'll come help you." Right? How many of you would be like, "Oh, sure, let me turn off the TV right away and go do something that probably isn't that fun, like, hey, help me unload the groceries from the car," right? We'd be like, "I want to do what I'm doing now, and I will come help you when I'm ready." And so, if we as parents struggle to transition from one fun activity to a less fun activity, how do you think our kids feel, right? Especially when we're talking to do anything to do with tech, right? So they're watching TV or playing a computer game or watching YouTube. And we talked about this in our tech training about how dopamine is running through their body, that reward signals and all those feelings of so exciting, so fun. And when we ask them to turn the TV off and go wash their hands and sit down at the table to eat a dinner they may or may not be so excited about, you can see why they're probably not jumping to go do what we ask them to do, right? Another thing is that I see a lot of parents, and I just witnessed this going to some homes and just having parents talk to each other, or parents and kids talk to each other, and I just sit back and watch. And it's very interesting to see parents talk and their kids are on their phones, the kids are watching TV, the kids are playing with their Lego or doing something, not even looking at their parents. And the parents are like, blah, 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 and do that, blah, 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 blah. And I just kind of look at the kids, and the kids are just like, yeah. Or maybe not even respond in any way, right? And then parents are like, "Come on, I told you this. Like, we need to get ready in the car in 5 minutes. How come you're not ready? Have me to put your shoes on?" And as a teacher, one of the main things, one of the first things I learned to do, and this is why teachers have our little call outs, like 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, right? Imagine you've got 30 kids in a classroom and you're at the front of the classroom trying to give an instruction. Okay, we're gonna put our books away and we're gonna go get ready to go out and go do recess. And the kids are all talking and maybe two have heard you, right? Do you think that the teacher's probably going to be pretty frustrated by that? Because we're like, "Hey, I have to raise my voice and yell to be heard," when that isn't really the case. We don't have to raise our voice. What we want is their attention. And so we as adults, as mature adults, understand that attention is important. Before we do any kind of communication, we need to make sure that we have the person's attention first. Otherwise, it's just like, the peanuts, blah, 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 like adults talking, and it's not really going in, right? So this is why having them pause what they're doing. They're watching TV. "Honey, please pause the TV." Before we give any kind of big, long instruction, pause the TV. "Can you pause your game for a second? I need to ask you something," right? Have them turn around and look at you, especially if they're younger children. Attention is so important because they get very easily distracted. So eyes on me, like have them look at you, stop what they're doing and look at us. So, especially with younger kids and kids who struggle with executive function, so planning, organization, time management, knowing how to structure activities to do this, I'm going to do this first and this next, right? They struggle to retain large pieces of information. So, young children and any older children or teenagers or even adults who struggle with ADHD or executive function skills, it's really important that we break down our instructions into bite-sized pieces, right? Instead of saying, "Hey, go get ready for dinner." Well, I don't know what that means. What we really want to say is, turn the TV off, go wash your hands, come get a plate, and sit down at the table. You see? Big task. What we think is probably not that big, go get ready for dinner. But for our kids, that might be too much information. What am I supposed to do first? Or I just come to the table and sit down and expect to be served, right? We need to be very clear about our level of expectations and break a bigger task down into smaller tasks. And this again takes skill because so many of us as parents are just throwing out information and not understanding that, oh, wait, there's actually multiple steps there in that task. And so how can I break this down into bite-sized pieces to help make it easier for them to remember? And then number 3, we want to check for understanding, right? So, so important because especially kids are going to be like, sure, yeah, what? And they heard something or they understood it in a way completely opposite or very, very different to how we meant it, right? So when we give our child an instruction, right, maybe we break it down, then we're going to check for understanding, which means, okay, did you hear? Can you repeat back to me so I know you understood what I said? Can you repeat back to me what you heard, right? Or repeat back to me what I said. And that way, if they get it completely wrong, you're going to be like, oh, okay, I see. Maybe I could have been a little bit clearer in my communication. Or maybe I could have talked slower. Maybe I could have talked clearer. Maybe I could have looked at them rather than just shout it from the other side of the kitchen, right? So, for younger kids especially, it's really important to offer reminders because they get easily distracted. And what's even better is having visual reminders, right? So, I know a lot of people don't like using behavior charts, but for certain kids who struggle with executive function or even younger children, having a visual, it doesn't necessarily mean a chart, but having some kind of, even a set of three posters on a wall, getting ready for dinner, or maybe getting ready for the next day. Hey, go brush your teeth, put on your pajamas, and choose a story, right? And have those three pictures on the wall. And so they know get ready for bed means go brush your teeth, put on your pajamas, and choose a story before bed, right? And that's how they understand exactly what we want them to do, right? And what's also good about this is that it produces dopamine in their body when they complete a task. So, yeah, for that same example of put your pajamas on, brush your teeth, and choose a story, maybe they can put a little check mark when they do each step. And checking something off, and I'm a big list person, so this is really exciting for me. Checking something off actually gives you a small hit of dopamine, which makes you more motivated to continue doing the task, to finish off that big task by breaking it down into those small steps, right? Doing each step at a time. Super important. All right. Another thing we are going to discuss is love languages, right? This is so important because one of the parents did ask me of how do I stop having to give my kids rewards, like physical rewards, like buy them something or give them a sticker or something like that. How can I just get them to do what they need to do without having to reward them each time they do something? So children are very naturally, all of us, I think, we enjoy some kind of boost, some kind of small reward in a way. It doesn't have to be a physical thing, but dopamine, that little release of dopamine, that's a reward in some way. That's a reward for our body and brain. That's a chemical reward in our body, right? And so you can see our body actually is designed to do that because it helps us stay motivated. Now, if we want to wean our children off from buying physical gifts and stickers and all those things. And you're like, okay, I know they need rewards, but I don't want to keep buying them things. What can I do instead? Focus on their love language, right? Do you know what your child's love language is? And this is a really great book. I know there's the 5 love languages for adults, but there's also one for kids, right? And so you can find the test online. I think you do it as a parent for your children, and you will get an idea. You probably, as a parent, if you are pretty close to your kids, you probably already have some idea of what it might be anyway. But it's probably pretty interesting to see that maybe if you thought your child was gifts because they really, really enjoy gifts and they're always asking for things, but you realize that actually quality time, spending time with them, is actually more important than buying them gifts. And so some parents are like, oh, I know my child, like words of affirmation, that's totally them, right? Other parents are like, well, my kid really likes when I buy them things. And so they may have a mistaken idea that gifts are their love language and actually quality time or physical touch might be, right? When weaning a child from using bribes or rewards, physical things, we want to motivate them using their love language, tapping into their love language. Now, most kids respond well to physical touch, right? We're talking about kids under 10. You have some really cuddly tweens and teens as well, which is great. But some of them also, they get a little bit self-conscious about their bodies, and so they may not respond that well to physical touch anymore, and they may respond better to words of affirmation. right? Teenagers often respond really well to words of affirmation because they don't get that a lot. And so, something else about this that people may not know is that your love language can change, right? So, when most kids are young, they really thrive on physical touch, hugs, shoulder pats, holding hands, stroking their hair, right? And as they get a little older into their tweens and they may feel self-conscious about their body, they may not want to be touched, but they really still value that love through words of affirmation, right? Now, remember, we need to be aware that words of affirmation can be confused for external validation. Oh, you did so good. Oh, that's amazing. I think you're, amazing. That's great. But what, parents can be like, but we're not supposed to use extrinsic motivation. We're not always supposed to be praising them and saying how wonderful and great they are, right? We're supposed to be letting them be intrinsically motivated by discovering those things within themselves. So if my child's love language is words of affirmation, then how can I get them intrinsically motivated when they need all this affirmation from me outside? Really important point is focus on the effort, not on the result. As parents, we focus so much on the result. Wow, you got an A. That's amazing. Oh, you're so smart. Rather than, wow, you studied so hard for that test. I saw every evening you came home and you were really trying so hard. That's amazing. And look at the result you got. Well done for trying so hard, right? Well done for putting so much effort. You were so focused on getting a good or you're getting this grade, right? Focus on the effort, not necessarily on the result. Because when we only focus on the result, what happens when our child doesn't get a good result? Then we don't have anything to praise them about, right? But if they are trying their best and don't get a good result, then we still praise that how much effort they put in. And what this does is it encourages them to put effort in even if they don't get a great result. If they only get a great result and they didn't do very much work, they're thinking, see, I don't need to put in very much effort. Or if they put in a lot of effort and didn't get a great result, then they're going to be like, see, what's the point? I didn't get validation and acknowledgement for all the work I did put in because I didn't get the result I wanted. All right? Focus on the effort. And it could be something like, yes, I see how hard you worked on that, right? If the kid gives us a picture and it's a little bit wonky or whatever, rather than being like, oh, even being fake about it, which a lot of parents do sometimes, especially if you have young kids. Oh, honey, that's the most beautiful picture I've ever seen, right? And our kid probably knows it's not, right? Rather than, wow, I saw you spending so much time choosing your colors really carefully and trying really hard to create those shapes. That's beautiful. I'm so proud of you. You see how there's a difference, right? Now, another thing, gifts can look like rewards or bribes, right? If your child's love language is gifts, it's like, I'm trying to get away from buying things for my kids, right? It doesn't have to be a toy. Gifts can be anything that is given to you, and probably it's even more impactful when it's not store bought, right? Rather than buying a toy for your child, look for something that's more meaningful for them. And that could be something that's store bought, but it's got some intention behind it. So, for example, if you know your kid really loves Hello Kitty stickers and you passed by a store and you saw some Hello Kitty stickers in the window and you're like, oh, I know my daughter really wants these things and she loves them, then getting that for her. But when you give it to her, you say, I got this for you because I know how special these are for you. And it may not be a very expensive gift, but the thought behind it is what matters, right? If you know your child is really into collecting stones, it doesn't mean you go out and buy them, some crystals. It means on your walk, you see, wow, it's a really pretty shiny stone. You pick that up and you go, I saw this stone on my walk and I thought of you because I know how much you like pretty stones. Or flowers, or, um, a T-shirt with a picture or a cartoon character that they like, right? It can be store bought as long as it has some intention behind it, right? Or even if you're a parent who doesn't have a lot of money, which is also the case sometimes, and I just like, I need to stop wasting a whole bunch of money on buying my kids things, right? Homemade things are often just as valuable, right? Making them a plate of cookies because it's their favorite cookie after they come home from school, right? making them a special cake, making them a milkshake, anything that has some thought behind it and actually has effort behind it is going to actually mean more to your child. Now, if you have a child who's a little bit like, well, I'm embarrassed by that. All the other girls got something store bought and I had something homemade. Then, it could be, it's a good time to have a conversation about what's actually more meaningful. And that sometimes things made at home are more meaningful than something you spent 5 minutes in the store paying for, right? And starting to help your child understand the value of these things. So, before we finish, now this has been about 45 minutes long, but I really wanted to get into this because it can be tricky, right? There are lots of different contexts in how to motivate our kids because our kids are all different. There's no one size fits all strategy, right? But these are four very pretty well across the board, well thought of strategies that work in general for kids all the way up to teenagers, right? Number one, this is my big kind of core message is connect with your children, connect with your teenagers. Focus on influence over control, right? So many of us parents try to control our kids. You have to do this. I'm going to punish you. I'm going to ground you if you don't do it, right? We are trying to control our children still. And what we want to do is influence them. We may have been able to control our kids when they were younger, but as they get older and they're just as big as us, our threats and our groundings and all of our things stop working. And it only serves to break down the connection between us when we have to use threats and bribes to get our children to do what we want, right? Influence over control. Our influence comes from our children's need to please us and to maintain a positive relationship with us. So this means that we need to spend time building that good connection between us, which takes time, it takes effort, right? Sometimes it might just feel easier to ground or to take away their phone or to punish because we may or may not get an instant result of that. But what it does in the long term is it damages our relationship. And for some kids, it stops working. And then what do? We have kids who we can't control anymore. And you have parents going, my kid runs the house. I heard a parent who was saying like my three-year-old controls me and my husband. And I was like, what? How can a 3-year-old control two adults? But this is this thing of if we try to control our kids through manipulation or force or bribes or threats, we lose our influence as parents. And that's all we have, right? Our power is our influence. We also need to understand that most misbehavior is a way for our children to reconnect with us. Our children are acting out because they want to connect with us. And most of the time, especially as busy parents, the only time our kids really get our unfocused attention, our focused attention is when they misbehave. Any kind of attention is good attention, right? So we can also see that in our busy society these days, sometimes our kids misbehave simply to get our reaction, simply to get our attention, right? And so if we spend our time connecting with them, they won't have to act out to get our attention, right? Number two, we talked about this earlier, play and fun. Play is a huge, essential need for children. I would say even teenagers, even adults need this as well, right? We don't think of it as essential, but actually it is. For having a healthy mental attitude, we need play and fun in our lives and laughter. So for younger children, it could be roughhousing and playing silly games together as a family, taking each other's socks off, right? Play these ridiculous games with my boys when they were little. They tried to take my socks off. I tried to take their soft socks and we tried to put into each other's mouths. It was absolutely ridiculous, but got us laughing and like squealing. Really, really good connection, right? My husband still does this now. I have a 16-year-old, and he comes down to the kitchen and kind of gives his dad like a dead arm or whatever. And at the beginning, I used to be like, oh, that's so, you can't like punch your dad or whatever. And it was playful, like a playful punch. But I didn't realize that it was his way of connecting with his dad, right? He'd go and punch his dad, and then his dad would like turn around and like wrestle him and give him a noogie or whatever. And that they still do that to this day. My son's almost 17, right? That is how they connect. That is how they have, after a long day of not seeing each other, that's how they reconnect and laugh and play and touch each other, right? That kids need that, right? Physical touch. Especially for younger children, play allows us to switch the dynamic of control. Remember, we talked about in our second slide how our kids are so often just told, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, sit down, be quiet, don't make a mess. They are constantly like, I am here, everybody else is here telling me what to do. And so when we get into a play dynamic, we are the poor sheep or the rabbit who's running away, and they're the big bad wolf, and they get to chase us, and we're the weak one or the scared one, and they're the strong one. It's all done in play, right? Play allows us to switch the dynamic of control and power with our kids. And it helps them when they feel in control and more powerful, then they don't need to push back when we ask them to do something. So do you see, when we don't have this dynamic and our kid just feels beaten down and controlled all the time, when we ask them to do something, hey, come wash your hands and get ready for dinner. No, I'm not going to. It's basically them saying, I don't want anybody telling me what to do. This is how I'm going to take my control back and say, no, I don't want to. When we allow the dynamic of our child to be in control in a playful setting, and oh my God, you're so fast, you're so strong, where you arm wrestle them and they jump on you and you're wrestled to the ground and they're so strong. Do you see how your child feels powerful? And then later on you say, wow, you're so strong and so much faster than mom. Okay, let's go wash our hands and get ready for dinner now. Okay, right? Do you see how we fed that need for control and power? And then when we need to take control and power back, they're much more agreeable. So really helpful. If you have a stubborn kid, play with them, switch the dynamic where they're the powerful one and you're the one who's overtaken or, not as strong as them, right? And do it in a playful and fun way as well. Laughter is really good. Next, we're going to talk about coaching. Now, even though I'm a coach, I tell parents that the skills I use, they're actually very simple. They're not easy because they take a lot of work on our parts as adults, but they're actually very easy. And I want parents to be able to learn those skills so they can start coaching their kids, right? You don't need to hire, if your child has, very specific behavior and big ones that you do need outside help, for sure, get that help. But a lot of this work can also be done by parents. Practicing empathy, validation, compassion, and active listening. You don't need a PhD to do those things. You may need to take a course or two. I had to. I also teach parents these skills in my 5-day course. Empathy and validation, right? Compassion. We want to also allow big feelings and tears. So when we have to hold boundaries with our kids, and I'm sorry, I know you don't want to do that, but we have to do that. That's what we agreed on, right? Your child is going to be upset. They're going to be angry because they don't want to be controlled. And so they may have some big feelings around it and say, I don't want to do that. You're the worst mom ever. And then when you hold the boundary, again, they're going to be upset and they might cry. And rather than be all, you know, get our feathers all ruffled because we don't want to make our kids mad or we don't want them to cry, we don't agree with them getting angry or saying, no, I don't want to do that, right? Instead of feeling like we need to have a power struggle with them, it's simply allowing them to have their big feelings. I'm still the parent here. I'm not going to change my rules based on my child not being happy with the rules I made. I'm still the parent, right? And if we do start to feel a little bit uncomfortable and start feeling like, okay, stop crying. You can have 10 more minutes watching TV, right? Because they throw a temper tantrum when you ask them to turn it off. We want to start to explore any discomfort that we have to crying and big emotions. Something else that's been, or something that a lot of parents are afraid of their kids' big emotions because they're afraid of big emotions in general, right? And so really starting to explore why that is. Because it's very difficult to be the leaders in our home if we are so triggered by our children having big emotions. And finally, we want to set empathic limits. We have house rules, and we talk about having a family meeting where we discuss house rules and agree on them as a family, right? If your child is under 5, they're probably not going to get much buy-in, but kids who are school age, absolutely, they can help set some of those rules in the house, right? Do we yell at each other? Do we swear? Do we hit each other? No, we don't. We take showers every night. We brush our teeth, right? They need to have some buy-in there as well. Otherwise, it's just more control, right? Reiterate house rules and expectations. Now, we also want to acknowledge any resistance and emotions that come up when we enforce those rules and boundaries, right? So they may agree upon them when everyone's sitting down nicely, and then you say, okay, turn off the TV, time to get ready for bed. And all of a sudden they're like, no, that's not fair. And you say, well, we just made this rule that bedtime's at 8:30. Well, that was unfair and I don't agree with it, right? We can allow their resistance to our boundaries, even something that they agreed on, and we still hold those boundaries, but we can acknowledge their feelings about that. I understand you're upset. You really wish you could watch more TV until 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock, but we agreed on as a family, bedtime is at 8:30, so let's get ready for bed, right? And we also want to offer alternatives and redirect misbehavior. So again, this is all something I give trainings on if you need more information about how this can look exactly for your family. Finally, underneath it all is we can only use these four strategies if we stay regulated ourselves. If we get upset when our teens push back at us, or our kid says, no, I don't want to, you're the worst mom ever, and we start getting upset, we are not going to be able to connect with our kids, to be able to practice empathy and validation, to hold boundaries and limits, or to even be a parent who wants to wrestle and roughhouse with our kids, right? If we're all stressed out ourselves. So before we can do any of those strategies, what we always need to start off with was staying regulated ourselves. And this is why I give a 3-part training. This is our 3-part mini course on how we can self regulate by learning to meet our needs as parents first, right? We are always giving so much to our kids, to other people, our friends, our work, and we don't take time to meet our needs. And so when nobody is meeting our needs, we get dysregulated very, very easily. And so this 3-part training can help you understand why you have some big emotions yourself and how to self regulate them by getting to the root of what our needs are, what our big emotion is telling us that we need. And so if you're interested in what that training, that 3-part training is, then please you can send me a message and I will give you more information about it. We also have other trainings. We have a whole library of video trainings right now. So if you're interested in any of those trainings, I invite you to reach out and ask me or my team for more information. You can just, either type into the chat below, or you can send me a private message to get more information about this 3-part training. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. This is going to be inside the group for a while, this training. So take the time to watch it as many times as you need, write down anything that you find interesting. And if you have any other questions, please reach out. Have a wonderful evening, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye for now.